It's been nearly 2 whole months since Amanda Nunes' shocking defeat to Julianna Peña at UFC 268. Yeah, 2 whole months. We can't believe it either because, wow, time is flying. But it seems that the Nunes v. Peña rivalry has just begun because the two may have a rematch very soon. Curious to know more? Stay tuned. First up, round 2 of Peña versus Nunes. On Friday, the 4th of February, it was announced that on the 30th season of the Ultimate Fighter reality series, Peña, the UFC Women's Bantamweight champion, and Nunes, the woman Peña defeated for the championship, will coach against one another. Following the end of the night, Peña and Nunes will fight in a rematch for the championship on an undetermined date. In an interview with SportsCenter, Peña shared that she has always wanted to give back to the next generation of UFC fighters and considers it an honor she feels blessed to be able to have. The Ultimate Fighter 30 begins filming this month and will premiere on ESPN Plus on May 3rd. This season of the program will feature 16 competitors, with 8 heavyweights and 8 women's flyweights competing. Each division's competitors will participate in a tournament, with the finals taking place this summer in Las Vegas. The victor of each division will receive a UFC contract worth 6 figures. Kamaru Usman's, who is the UFC welterweight champion, brother, Mohammed Usman, will also be part of the TUF 30 heavyweight tournament. We can't wait to see if he will be following in his brother's footsteps of greatness. Peña stunned the UFC when she submitted Nunes in the 3rd round at UFC 268 in December. The Washington native, who trains in the Chicago area, has won 2 consecutive fights and 7 of her last 9. Peña, 32, will return to the show as a coach. She was the first female champion of the Ultimate Fighter in 2013 when she competed on TUF 18. Peña shared that this is her chance to hush the naysayers and that she's always been in a situation where no one really believes in her because she's an underdog. But Peña believes that this is also another chance for her to put herself in the spotlight and establish the fact that she's in this to everyone. We're with you all the way, Peña. Nunes is often recognized as the greatest female fighter of all time. Prior to the Peña setback 2 months ago, the Brazil native, who trains out of Florida, had won 12 straight fights. Nunes, 33, has wins against Ronda Rousey, Chris Cyborg, and Valentina Shevchenko. Oh yeah, against the Ronda Rousey. She's impressive, all right. Nunes is also one of only 4 fighters in the UFC's history who's held 2 titles in 2 different divisions at the same time. A force to be reckoned with. One we're still kinda in shock of seeing beat, not gonna lie, but with an alleged rematch coming up, maybe Nunes will bounce back soon. One can only hope. Despite having lost to Peña, Nunes still had some nice things to say against her competitor, a true professional. Nunes said that Peña genuinely deserved her title win and that she is excited to be put in a cage with her again and is hoping to do things exactly the way she aims to. Well, all we can do right now is wish both Nunes and Peña the very best, and as Effie Trinket once said, hope that the odds are ever in their favor. Next, Nunes dishes on her loss to Peña. Amanda Nunes, the former UFC Women's Bantamweight champion, wanted to explain a few points regarding her first defeat in 7 years. After losing her championship to Julianna Peña at UFC 269, the Lioness felt compelled to explain what transpired before the fight that resulted in such a poor performance. Nunes stated to Ag Fight that injuries, a case of COVID-19, and match cancellations prevented her from adequately preparing for the fight at UFC 269. Despite the fact that she had several reasons to retire from the fight, Amanda chose to continue fighting, a decision that the Brazilian now deeply regrets. Nunes shared that when the initial fight against Peña was scheduled, she had to call it off as a result of her getting COVID-19, and that around the second time, she was in the middle of a training camp through which she sustained a few injuries. Don't get her wrong though. Nunes said that every athlete has injuries, and there's no running away from that. But her injuries caused a lot of problems for her, but she was stubborn and insisted that she could still fight. She continued that her camp didn't go too well, and that sometimes as a fighter, they tend to not listen to their bodies. And well, we all know how that turned out for her in the end. In the aftermath aftermath of the first bout and in the early stages of the rematch, Nunes and Peña have been courteous and respectful to one another. Nunes, who hadn't lost since 2014, previous to December, complimented Peña on her victory, but vowed to prove the difference in the rematch. Nunes said, "We all know I'm better than her. We all know I didn't show up that night. Don't get me wrong. I feel like Julianna is a great fighter, but she's not better than me. I fought a lot of girls better than her in my best shape and still walked away with my belt. So with Julianna, this rematch will be different." Now let's talk about Romero versus Manhoff. Yoel Romero will be looking for his first Bellator victory when he faces MMA veteran Melvin Manhoff in the co-main event on May 6th in Paris, according to the organization. The fight will take place at light heavyweight. Prez has previously been challenged for the UFC belt. Ryan Bader will defend his Bellator heavyweight championship against France native Czech Congo in a rematch as part of the main event. The 44-year-old Romero, 13-6, a former Olympic wrestling silver medalist, has lost his previous 4 fights, including his Bellator debut last September at Bellator 266 by split decision to Phil Davis. The Cuban native declared his intention to leave the UFC in late 2020. He battled for the UFC middleweight and interim middleweight belts numerous times, including a majority decision defeat to Israel Adesanya at UFC 248 in March 2020. In November 2020, UFC veteran Corey Anderson ended Manhoff's 2-fight losing run, 32-15-1-2-C. The Suriname native and lifelong resident of the Netherlands has been a professional MMA fighter since 1995 and is noted for his explosive striking technique. He's competed for Strikeforce, One Championship, Dream, and KSW, among others. This is certainly an impressive lineup, and we can't wait to see the turnout. Next, we have Kamaru's surgery. One of the best MMA fighters in the world went under the knife on February 7th. UFC welterweight champion Kamaru Usman underwent surgery to repair a ligament in his hand, according to Usman's manager Ali Abdelaziz of Dominance MMA. Dana White, the president of the UFC, shared a graphic image of the surgery on social media. Usman is expected to return for International Fight Week, the UFC's huge annual summer festival in Las Vegas, according to Abdelaziz. The finale of this year's events, UFC 276, is set for July 2nd at T-Mobile Arena. Usman underwent surgery on one of his hands, but Abdelaziz wouldn't specify which one. White has stated that Usman's next championship defense would most likely be against top challenger Leon Edwards, who defeated Nate Diaz in June. According to ESPN, Usman is the best pound-for-pound MMA fighter in the world. Usman, 21, is amassing one of the most impressive resumes in UFC history. The Nigerian-born Texas native has won 15 straight fights, one short of the UFC record established by former middleweight champion and all-time great Anderson Silva. Usman, 34, is coming off a unanimous decision win over Colby Covington in November at UFC 268. Usman has been the welterweight champion since 2019, and he has made 5 title defenses. We haven't been given an exact date for Usman's return yet, but we certainly hope it's soon and that he recovers from his surgery soon. Take care, Usman. Now let's talk about the Joe Rogan situation. In recent weeks, Joe Rogan's headlines have gone well beyond the MMA ring, with the UFC commentator, comedian, and popular podcast host entangled in a number of issues and finding himself in quite the hot water. Following the removal of their music from Spotify by Rock and Roll Hall of Famers Neil Young and Joni Mitchell, among others, in protest at what they claim is COVID-19 falsehoods on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, a montage video of Rogan uttering the N-word emerged online this week. Big yikes. In reaction to each scandal, Rogan released a video in which he explained himself and said what he intends to do to improve himself in the future. Rogan promised to organize a more broad guest list for the COVID-19 discussions. He apologized for the racial slurs he used in previous episodes of his podcast, but said his statements were taken out of context. But let's be real, we really don't see how a racial slur could be taken out of context. And that Planet of the Apes comment too? Come on, Joe. You'd think that someone in their 50s would know better and be educated on these matters, and not say these things, but guess not. Spotify CEO Daniel Ek stated on Monday that the business will not silence Rogan. Ek also said that Spotify will invest $100 million in the creation of content from marginalized communities, which is great on one end, yeah. We'd love to see more POC and minority content, but Spotify not even really condemning Joe Rogan's actions is kind of a slap on everyone who he offended. Well, that's all we have for you guys today. Thanks for watching.